Okay, so this is chapter 1 of the study guide for the midterm review. Let's look at number 1. What are 4 coplanar points? Allie.
C, B, F, and E.
C, B. So C and B are on the blue plane. F is not on the blue plane. So what are 2 other points on the blue plane? D and R is talking about the plane. So since R is the capital cursive letter, it's plane R. So the blue plane is plane R. What's another point that's on plane R? G. So those are 4 coplanar points that are on plane R.
Coplanar points make like a...
They're just all on the plane. They don't have to be in any shape. They don't have to be on the same line, but they're just all on the same plane. What is a line containing B and C? Line BC. So we put BC, and then we have to put the line with the 2 arrows on top. What is a plane that contains A, G, and E? Plane S. So we would write plane S. Okay, let's look at number 4. How do we find the length of JL? So we're finding this length here. What's the formula we need to set up? So J is at negative 1.5 and L is at 2. So how do we find the length of JL?
Negative 1.5 plus 2 and absolute value.
So we take the absolute value of negative 1.5 minus 2. And we get the absolute value of 3.5. Negative 3.5, which turns into 3.5. We could also just look at this graph and count how many spaces we're going. So we're going 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. Okay, now let's do the same thing for HK, number 5. So H is at 4, at negative 4, and K is at 1. So we're going to do negative 4 minus 1. All in the absolute value sign. So what do we get when we do absolute value of negative 4 minus 1?
Positive 5.
So we get the absolute value of negative 5, which turns into positive 5. So if we count the spaces from H to J, we go 1, H to K, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's look at number 6. Y is between X and Z. So if you have a problem like this, it's best to start off just drawing the line first. So we have a line segment, XZ, and Y is somewhere in between them. We know that XY is going to be 13.8. And XZ, so the whole line is going to be 21.4. So what can we do to find YZ? Subtract. So we would subtract what? So 21.4 minus 13.8. And what do we get? 7.6. So YZ is 7.6. For this one, another way we can do it is we know that the 2 segments, XY plus YZ, is going to equal the whole thing, XZ. And now we can just substitute what we have in. So we know that xy is 13.8 plus yz, so we don't know this yet, so we just leave it as yz, and is equal to xz, which is 21.4. And then we just do the same thing. We subtract 13.8 from both sides. And we get yz is equal to 7.6. Yes. Now let's look at number 7. Q is between P and R. Find PR. So here, what can we do to find PR?
Put them equal to each other. 3x. Oh wait, no, sorry. 14x minus 6 equals 3x plus 6x plus 4.
Right, so we need to add PQ and QR and set it equal to the whole thing, PR. So we add 3x plus 6x plus 4 and set it equal to 14x minus 6. And now we just solve for x. So we do minus 9x on this side, minus 9x, and plus 6. So we get 10 is equal to 5x. Divide by 5. And what do you get for x? 2. What do we need to do with x equals 2? Plug it into PR. So we get 14 times 2 minus 6, which is equal to 22. Perfect.
Nice.
Any questions on those? Okay, let's move on to number 8. So 8 is asking us to find angle VYZ. So we're going to start at V, then go to Y, and then go to Z. So we're looking for this angle here. So what do we do to find angle VYZ?
Can't you just look at it and see if it's obtuse or like a cube?
Right. So we know it's going to be 90 plus 35. It's going to be bigger than 90. It doesn't even matter what number we're adding to the 90. We just know that this is bigger than 90. So it would be, what type of angle? Obtuse.
Thank you, Ms. Carver.
Welcome. Okay, next we're going to look at ZYW. So we start at Z, then go to Y, then go to W. So what type of angle is this? A cube, because it's less than 90. Okay, and last we're going to look at angle XYW. So we start at X, then go to Y, then go to W.
It's a right angle.
It's a right angle, because it's 90 degrees. What is the measure of a straight angle? So if I asked you to find the measure of angle VYW, what's the measure of a straight angle?
180.
180. All right, number 11. Find the measure of angle HJL. So we're finding this big angle here. What do we need to do to find this angle HJL? Add the two together. So we do 52 plus 47, and we get 99 degrees. Any questions on anything from 1.3?
Question's gonna be on midterm.
There's 40 questions on the midterm.
Okay.
Yes, and they're all multiple choice. Okay, let's look at 12. tell whether the angles are only adjacent, adjacent and form a linear pair, or not adjacent. So we're looking at angle 1 and angle 2. What type of angles are these two? Adjacent, because they're right next to each other. They share this side here, so they are adjacent. Now let's look at angle 3 and angle 4. What type of angles are 3 and 4?
They form a linear pair.
They're adjacent and they form a linear pair. Because this line right here is a straight line. So since they share a side and form a straight line, they're adjacent and form a linear pair. Now let's look at angle 2 and angle 5. What type of angles are these? Not adjacent. So they're not adjacent because they don't share a side. They're not right next door to each other. All right, 15 says find the measure of the complement and supplement of each angle. So first, let's look for the complement. What do we do to find the complement?
You would do 90 minus 74.6.
So 90 minus 74.6, and what do we get?
I got 15.4.
15.4.
And for the supplementary, would you do 180 minus 74.6?
Yep, so then we just do 180 minus 74.6 for the supplement, and what do we get?
I got 105.4.
105.4.
Are we going to see that in the midterm?
Yes.
Why not?
That's why they're on the review, because you're going to see it on the midterm.
How come 2 and 5 are linear pairs?
They don't form 180 degrees. So they don't share a side. So 2 and 5 are not adjacent because they don't share a side. They're not right next door. So like 1 and 5 would be adjacent. But angle 1 is in between 2 and 5. So 2 and 5 can't be adjacent. And then they don't form a linear pair because they don't add up to 180. Yes. Okay, now let's find the complement and supplement of number 16. So we do the same thing we did before. For the complement, we just do 90 minus 2x minus 4. So now we have to distribute the negative. So we get 90 minus 2x plus 4, which is equal to, did anyone do this one?
94 minus 2x.
94 minus 2x, perfect. So our complement is 94 minus 2x. In the supplement, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of 90, we're going to use 180. So we do 180 minus 2x minus 4, and we need to distribute the negative again. So we get 180 minus 2x plus 4. So what do we get for the supplement?
184 minus 2x.
184 minus 2x. Perfect. Any questions on 1.4? All right, let's look at 1.5, number 17. Find the perimeter and area of each figure. So let's find the perimeter of the square.
4x plus 16.
So what's the formula for perimeter?
4s.
4 times the side. So now we would just do 4 times x plus 4. And we get 4x plus 16. Perfect. We can't solve it. because we don't know what x is and we don't know what the perimeter is equal to. So we have nothing to set it equal to. All right, so now let's find the area of the square. What's the formula for area of a square? S squared. So we're going to do the side squared. So we get x plus 4 squared. How do we find x plus 4 squared?
Couldn't you just do 2 times 5x plus 7 in parentheses?
We're still on 17 on the square.
Oh.
So how do we find x plus 4 squared? How do we simplify this?
X to the second is 16.
So this would be like saying x plus 4 times x plus 4, right? If we got rid of the squared, we're just multiplying the same thing. So what do we do when we multiply x plus 4 times x plus 4? What do we have to do? We FOIL. So we have to do the first term, so we get x squared. Then the outsides, so plus 4x. So now we're multiplying the outsides. Then we do the insides, plus 4x. And then we do the last terms. So 4 times 4, which would be plus 16. So the area is equal to x squared plus 8x plus 16. Yes. So here we just FOILed. This is algebra. Okay, let's look at 18. How do we find the perimeter of a triangle? The perimeter. What do we add all the sides together? So the perimeter would be 12 plus 8 plus x minus 5. So the perimeter would be 15 plus x.
Wait, what is it? For number 19, right?
18.
Oh, 18.
How do we find the area of a triangle? 1/2 base times height. So we do 1/2 times, what's our base here? X minus 5. And what's our height? 8. So for the area, we would get 4x minus 20.
Can't you just like the equations and it would be the same thing?
Yeah, if you got negative 20 plus 4x, that would be the same. Or if you got x plus 15.
I'm confused. How did you get 4x?
So
And then 20.
we can multiply the 1/2. We would have to distribute to the x and the minus 5. So we would get 1/2 x minus 2.5. And then we still have to multiply that by the 8. So now we have to distribute the 8. So we get 1/2 x times 8 would be 4x. And negative 2.5 times 8 is minus 20. An easier way to do it would just be to multiply the 1/2 and the 8 first, and then distribute the 4 to everything.
So wait, 2.5 times 8 is 20?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be,
Okay, so now let's look at 19. How do we find the perimeter of a rectangle? We add up all the sides. So the perimeter will be 20 plus 20, so 40, plus 5x plus 7 plus 5x plus 7.
Can you do this? I put 2 and then in parentheses
Uh-huh.
5x plus 7.
So you could just do 20 times the length and then, or 2 times the length and then 2 times the width. And add those two. Or you could just add up all the sides, whichever you prefer. Allie, what'd you get for your answer?
I got 10x plus 54.
Perfect. 10x plus 54. So that's our perimeter. How do we find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. So we would do 20 times 5x plus 7. So for the area, we're going to get 100x plus 140.
And then for the next one, I know we haven't gone over it yet, but is it okay if we just leave the pi next to it?
Yeah. So let's do 20. Find the circumference and area of the circle. So how do we find the circumference of a circle? What's our formula?
Pi d. 2 pi r.
2 pi r or pi d, but since here it gives us the radius, we'll just leave it as 2 pi r. So we do 2 times pi times 21, which would be equal to 42 pi. Perfect.
I just multiply with the pi.
That's fine.
Yeah.
On the test, you're not going to have a calculator, so you'll leave it in pi.
Is there any chapters that we actually needed the calculator for?
Are there gonna be chapters in the future?
I don't think so. Okay, so how do you find the area of a circle?
Pi r squared.
Pi r squared. Remember, the area is always going to be squared, so when thinking about the area of a circle, you're going to just square the radius. So the area is going to be, what's 21 times 21?
441.
441 pi,
And then meters squared.
and then meters squared.
Well, we can count it off if we don't put that.
No, because it's multiple choice, so
Do we have to put the word square?
it's going to be multiple choice.
Okay,
So it'll already be there.
don't test multiple choice.
The whole test is multiple choice. 40 questions, multiple choice. Only 40. All right, any questions on 1.5?
How many chapters is it in total?
Whatever we've done in class.
1 through 5?
Yeah, but we've only done like half of 5, so.
Okay. For some reason I thought we skipped chapters.
We skipped some lessons, so the lessons we skipped aren't going to be on it. So like on the review, I like whited out the lessons that we skipped. All right, y is the midpoint of AB. Find the missing coordinates. So here it gives us A and B, and we need to find the midpoint y. So how do we find the midpoint?
What I did -1, 4 in parentheses equals 3 plus x over 2 parentheses, not parentheses, sorry, comma 2 plus y over 2.
So for this one, it's giving us A and B, so all we need to do is plug this into our midpoint formula. So we take the average of the x's, so we add the x's together first, so 3 plus -1 over 2, and then we do the average of the y's, which would be 2 plus 4 over 2, and we get 2 over 2, which becomes what? 1. And then 6 over 2, which becomes 3. So our midpoint here would be 1, 3.
Why would you add them together?
That's the formula for the midpoint. look at the board. This is the formula. So we add the two x's, we add the two y's, and we divide it by 2.
But they added it from plus y and plus x.
Well, that's because in this example, they gave you the coordinates of the midpoint and had you find the other endpoint. But here it gives us the two endpoints and asks us to find the midpoint. So 22, use the distance formula and Pythagorean theorem to find the distance to the nearest tenth between each pair of points. So what is the distance formula? So it's the square root of what comes first?
Alright, coach, check. Whoops. Sorry, coach. Whoops. I'm in the middle of something serious. What are you doing, Billy?
Okay, so you do x2. So let's label these. We have our x1 and y1 and our x2 and y2. So we do x2, which is what? 6 minus our x1, which is -2, and this is going to be squared, and then plus our y2, which is 1 minus our y1, and this is squared.
And why don't you put that over?
No, we just leave it under the square root. So now we do, what is 6 minus -2? 8. So I'm just simplifying right here. 6 minus -2, which is 8. And what's 1 minus 4? -3 squared. So we get the distance is equal to the square root of, what's 8 squared? 64 plus what's -3 squared? +9.
Wait, wouldn't you do 6 minus +2? You wouldn't add it, right?
So remember, when we're doing minus a negative number, this becomes a big plus sign. So we're just adding 6 plus 2, and we get 8. So we get the distance is the square root of 73. And since we don't have a calculator, we can just leave it as that. So this is the distance formula. In number 23, we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So what's the Pythagorean theorem? A squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. What is our c squared? What part of the triangle is our c squared? The hypotenuse. So what's our a?
3.
So 3 squared plus, what's our b? 4 is equal to the hypotenuse squared. So just c squared. So what's 3 squared? 9 plus 16 is equal to c squared. So we have 25 is equal to c squared. Now we have to take the square root of both sides. And c is equal to 5. So the length of AB is 5. So this is everything for chapter 1. Any questions on chapter 1?
No.
How much time do we have left?
Like
20 minutes. Okay, let's start chapter 2. Number 1 says make a conjuncture about each pattern. Write the next 2 items. So what's happening in this pattern?
So it adds by 1, but it goes up and then down and then up.
Right. So what will our next item look like?
You'll have 1 up, 1 down, 1 up, and then another one down.
So it'll look like that, right? And then what's our next item? Yes. This one. All right, number 2, complete the conjuncture. The sum of an even number and an odd number is question mark. So we need to add an even number. What's any even number?
3 plus 2.
What's an even number?
4.
4. And what's an odd number?
1.
Six is an
6 is an
even
even
number.
number.
5.
3.
I think we're in third
Okay,
grade, so.
backwards.
So what's 4 plus 3?
7.
7. All right, what's another even number?
2.
6. And what's an odd number?
4. 3.
8 is not an odd number. 4 is not an odd number.
Oh.
Odd. We already used 3, so 5. So 6 plus 5 is 11. What do these two numbers have in common? They're odd. So the sum of an even number and an odd number is going to be odd. So if you see a question like this on the test, just come up with an even number and an odd number and see what works.
Also, is a natural number like any number like 10 or something?
So the square of a natural number is blank. So what's any natural number?
81.
Let's do 1. What's 1 squared? 1. What's a natural number that's negative? Any? Negative 2. So what's negative 2 squared? 4. So what does 1 and 4 have in common? They're both positive.
Wait, how's the square root of negative 2 4?
What's a negative times a negative? I'm saying negative 2 squared, not the square root.
Oh, there's a square root.
So negative 2 squared would be a negative times a negative, so it's positive. So the square of a natural number is positive. So for the next questions, we're going to determine if each conjuncture is true. If not, write or draw a counterexample. So if C is the midpoint of AB, then AC is congruent to BC. This is true. Number 6, if 2x plus 3 is equal to 15, then x is equal to 6.
That's true. It's true.
So if we subtract 3 and we get 12 and then divide 2, so we get x is equal to 6. So this is true. Number 7, there are 28 days in February.
False leap year.
False. Leap year.
There's 21.
Would that be
What
an
is
actual
that
question on the midterm?
No, but you're going to have questions that say determine if the conjuncture is true.
Okay.
So leap year is our counterexample. Any questions on 2.1? Let's go to 2.2. Determine if each conditional is true. If false, give a counterexample. So if two angles are adjacent, then they have a common ray. So if we have two adjacent angles here, angle 1 and angle 2, do they have a common ray?
Yes.
Yes, this one in the middle. So this is true. So if you multiply two irrational numbers, the product is irrational. What's an irrational number?
It's like 1/2 or 0.5 or like not whole numbers.
Not whole numbers, but
Mixed numbers.
it could also be numbers with a square root. So if we had square root of, what's any number?
10.
10 times the square root of 10. What do we get here?
I have no idea. What's the square root of
Square root of 100.
What's the square root of 100?
10.
10. So is the product of two irrational numbers irrational?
Yes. No.
No, so this would be false. And this is our counterexample right here.
Wait, how is that false? Because apparently, because doesn't 10 have a square root or something?
So this just says if you multiply two irrational numbers, the product is irrational. So we need to find one example where we're multiplying two irrational numbers and the product is not irrational. So the two numbers we're multiplying here that are irrational are square root 10 times square root 10. And we get 10 as our answer, which is not irrational. So this proves that this is false.
Because it's a whole number?
Because it's a whole number. Because it's not irrational. For number 10, we're going to write the converse, inverse, and contrapositive of each conditional statement and find the truth value of each. So I don't really have enough space here to write it, but what would be the converse if angle x is a right angle, then the measure of angle x is equal to 90? So, right, we just flip them. So if the measure of angle x is equal to 90, then angle x is a right angle.
That's true.
And that's true. What would be the inverse?
If x isn't a right angle, then the measure of angle x is not equal to 90.
Right, so if angle x is not a right angle, then the measure of angle x is not equal to 90.
That's true.
That's true also. And what about the contrapositive?
If x,
The measure of angle x is 90, then angle x is not a right triangle.
So if the measure of angle x is not equal to 90, then angle x is not a right angle. That's true also. Perfect. So if x is a whole number, then x is equal to 2. What's the converse? Julia, what's the converse of number 11?
I don't know.
Anyone want to help her out? Ryan, what's the converse of 11?
If x equals 2, then x is a whole number.
Perfect. If x equals 2, then x is a whole number. So we just flip them. What would be the inverse?
If x isn't a whole number, then x equals 2.
If x is not a whole number, then x does not equal 2.
that's
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant.
That's false. And what's the contrapositive?
x could equal
What's the contrapositive, our last?
if
No.
x-
You want to do it, Jeremiah?
If x is not equal
X
to
is
then
not equal to, then x is not the whole number.
Perfect. If x does not equal 2, then x is not a whole
is
number.
that false? Because x could equal 3 or another number.
Right, so that would be false.
And then if x isn't a whole number, then x doesn't equal 2, right? Because it could be something else.
Right. Okay, so for 12, 13, and 14, use the true statements below to determine whether each conclusion is true or false. So Sue is a member of the swim team. When the swim team practices, Sue swims. The team begins practice when the pool opens. The pool opens at 8 a.m. on weekdays and 12 noon on Saturday. So the swim team practices on weekdays only.
False.
That's false. Because the pool opens on Saturdays.
So this is false. What about 13? Sue swims on Saturdays.
That is true.
True. And 14. Swim practice starts at the same time every day.
False, because there could be holidays.
Well, false because they practice at noon on Saturday.
Oh.
Any questions on 2.2 or 2.3?
We have 5 minutes left.
False, false, false.
It's false, true, false. Okay, let's look at 15. Determine if a true biconditional can be written from each conditional statement. If not, give a counterexample. So 15 says, if the measure of one angle of a triangle is 90 degrees, then the triangle is a right triangle. So how do we write a biconditional from this statement? What does a biconditional need?
If and only if.
If and only if.
So would you put the measure of one angle of a triangle is 90 degrees if and only if the triangle is 90?
Right. So in a biconditional, we get rid of the if and then, and in the middle, we put if and only if. So this would read, the measure of one angle of a triangle is 90 if and only if the triangle is a right triangle. Let's look at 16. Complete each statement to form a true biconditional. Two angles are blank if and only if the sum of their measure is 90. Complementary, perfect. Okay, this is a good stopping point. We'll start at 2.5 tomorrow.